Okay, welcome to Politics After Dark. I am your host, Rachel, and I have with me Mark Allen Feldman, who was, I guess, would it be fair to call you sort of a dark horse candidate at the Libertarian Convention for president?
Definitely.
You made the debate stage, and I got to see you really for the first time at that debate, and I mean, I fell in love with you during that debate, as I think a lot of people did. So I'm really thrilled that you came by to shake my hand right before voting, and I'm super thrilled to have you here on my show. So welcome, Dr. Feldman.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we are also waiting for Jeffrey Tucker, who should be along soon, and also Tom Mullen, both of which were at the convention this past weekend. And so we have 4 people that were all at the convention in very different capacities. So it should be a very good recap for people that were not there. But let's see. First of all, I want to ask you about, you had a little moment of heroism that I wanted to just quickly ask you about. It made quite an impression on all in attendance, but there was actually a bad accident. I don't know how bad. In the parking lot at the Rosen Center Hotel, a pedestrian actually got hit by a car. And you are a physician, and several people saw you just hauling ass out to the parking lot to assist this injured person. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What happened?
Well, I don't have any inside details. I could just say which I've heard, which apparently a car may have been stolen and been sped out of the parking lot. Appears that 2 pedestrians were hit, one with only minor injuries, the other one more seriously. And
I had not heard that angle. Wow.
And I was at a breakfast where Tim Moen from Canada was speaking. Now, Tim is also an EMT. So when I heard they asked if there was a doctor, well, since every time in any of the debates anyone refers to me as Mr. Feldman and I say it's Dr. Feldman, I certainly couldn't hide the fact. But I'm an anesthesiologist, and often what we do is to put out fires. And several times a day I hear, they need you in 3, they need you in 17, and we take off running. That's just what we do.
Yeah. Wow. So you assisted until the EMTs arrived, and then it was all in their hands, huh?
Yes. There really was not much to be done, but basically just to assess and see if things were stable or deteriorating. But the EMTs arrived in time, and again, the injuries seemed serious, but not immediately life-threatening.
Wow. Gosh, poor guy. That's terrible. I didn't know that it was potentially a car being stolen. That's incredible. Yeah. That's one instance where pedestrians don't have the right of way. You should still look both ways and not assume that the car is going to stop for you, I guess. I don't know. That's very scary. So tell me a little bit about what it was like for you to be on the debate stage, and to just talk a little bit about that. What was that like for you?
Well, I just have so much fun with the whole thing.
You did. We had fun watching you have fun.
Because
uh-oh, what happened? Oh no, he froze.
Give it a minute, it'll catch up.
Oh, okay, you're back. Sort of.
I think I'm going to turn my video off for a minute and see if that helps with the
I see
bandwidth.
you again, but maybe you need to reset your connection.
Let's see. Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you okay and see you okay. Maybe give it another go.
Let's try this. Now, can you hear me?
Can hear you, yes.
Okay, so that's a more attractive photo of me anyhow. So maybe I'll leave that on while I'm speaking, and we'll have extra bandwidth.
Well,
this way I can.
I don't want to miss.
I'd rather see you anyhow.
We'll go ahead. We'll go ahead with it.
But we can try it in a few minutes and see if it clears up. But I had a different kind of philosophy and strategy of the whole process.
Yeah.
Because I really did not want to run in the primary unless I thought that there was a chance of following through in the general election. So I figured that if I came in as a dark horse candidate and came in with no hospitality suite, no name recognition, no fundraising, no buttons or bumper stickers, and if I could still ended up winning and most of the media completely ignored me, that would be well positioned to be a big surprise that would make waves in the general election when everybody was going, who is Feldman?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good philosophy.
Because my point about these elections is I think people think about elections in the wrong way. They're not contests. They're not races. They're decisions.
Uh-huh.
And it shouldn't be up to the candidates to be the best fundraiser or the best speaker. Each of us have different principles, different philosophy, different plans for what we would do. So let's make it a decision of the people to actually vote for the best candidate as a candidate and not these other extraneous things.
Yeah.
I always think it's kind of crazy for people to say, well, the Libertarians have the best candidate, but they have no chance of winning the election. Well, if you're the best candidate, shouldn't you at least have a chance?
I know, right? It doesn't make any sense. I'm so sick of the wasted vote argument. How do you deal with that?
Well, what I do is I'm going to try to try the video back again, see if that's better. So the way I go against the wasted vote issue is I don't try to reach out to the disgruntled Democrats and Republicans. I think what we need, no, I think as a party, we need to go to people who are like me, the non-voters. In 2012, Obama got 66 million votes. Romney got 61 million. Gary got 1 million votes, but there were nearly 100 million people who could have voted but did not vote. So we're not trying to get them away from Democrats and Republicans. We just have to show that we're better than staying home.
Yeah, but that in itself, that's an uphill battle, but all of it is really.
Well, it actually may not be as difficult. You know, Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico vote 90% of the time, but when they move to the U.S., they only vote 9% of the time. So did they suddenly become apolitical or too lazy? I think it's because when they're in Puerto Rico, they have someone to vote for. Here, they don't feel like they're represented.
Or maybe they're smaller. Everything is at a smaller scale in Puerto Rico, so maybe they feel like their vote actually counts. And then they come here and everything is so huge, and they're just one of a gazillion votes. Maybe there's something of that to it.
There's still local elections and statewide elections, and Puerto Rico is not small town either. But but it'll be interesting to watch. You know, like I said, I was a non-voter for 50 years, and it wasn't because I wasn't interested in politics. It's just that I thought all politicians were liars.
Yeah.
So why bother? And the thing is,
a reasonable assumption.
The other thing is, no one reaches out to the non-voters because they tend not to have any money. They tend to be lower socioeconomic class, lower education, and you know, they're not the kind of people you want to look for campaign contributions. So even if any of the old party candidates, even if they got their votes, they would find that they wouldn't be represented anyway.
Right. So say you had got the nomination, what would have been your strategy to reach out to non-voters? How do you do that?
Well, I would try to leverage the power and strength that we have. The thing is, we own the third slot. There's going to be probably Hillary Clinton in one, and then Donald Trump in another, and then we own the third slot. So that's going to give us more attention this year than usual. It may not give us votes, but at least give us attention.
Yeah, already that's happening. I hope it keeps up. But there's like this wave of interest. I just hope we capitalize on it and it doesn't go away.
So my plan, if I got the nomination, I would expect, since most of the media had never interviewed me, I would be getting lots of phone calls, and my response would be, "Sorry, I'm too busy. You know, I'm in the OR tomorrow." And keep them knocking on the door. And then I had made some tentative arrangements to quickly put together a media event. I was going to call it the Libertarian Party Media Circus, I guess, where we would have a fundraiser for our voter registration drive. We could invite the media to come, and the 10 biggest donors to the drive get to ask a question or two. So we can then kind of have them jump through hoops, and then maybe save half the tickets for libertarians, half for the media and others. And after everybody gets one or two questions, we could ask the audience to vote by approval voting. Which of the media personalities do you want to see in the second half?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So then they'll be all motivated to ask good questions in the first half, because if somebody says who's going to build the roads, chances are they're going to make it to the second half. That's what we have to do. We have to control the media. And I think most people do the opposite. They run after the media. They try to change their message to appeal to the media. We shouldn't do that. You know, our power doesn't come from the media. Our power comes from our dedication, our principles, our ballot access, and we can use that.
Well, it really depends on how much leverage you have with the media. In other words, I mean, I think what you're presenting is kind of a risky strategy, because it's possible that if you're too much of a pain, they'll move on to a different story. You don't want that to happen. So, I mean, if you've got sort of some capital and leverage.
You do want that to happen, and I'll tell you why. The media is owned and controlled by the same multinational corporations and wealthy individuals that own and control the Democratic and Republican Party. So unless it's like, would you try to get the Democrats and Republicans to support us? I don't think so. The media, if the media is going to ignore us, then it's better for them to ignore us than what they really would do is to damage us. I recall in New York, they had their annual, they had their state convention, and they had a debate there, and they should have had it in Albany. They would have had a better turnout. It's easier for people in the state to get there. It's less expensive, but they had it in Manhattan because they wanted to make it easy for the media. I would have done just the opposite. I would have definitely had it in Albany, because if the media aren't going to come to Albany to see you, if they're not that interested, they're not going to do you any favors. And they'll do what they can to make us look ridiculous, and it's not that hard to do. Huh.
That's very interesting. I don't know if I agree.
Well, I'll tell you, I always say I prefer people who don't agree. And that's one of my things that I've said, is that when I have discussions with people, you know, I really don't like hearing Feldman. I like the kind of response that you had. Feldman, maybe you got something there. I don't know.
Yeah, that was exactly my reaction.
We really have to think. I tell people, I'm not trying to persuade people. I'm trying to blow their minds. I mean, could you imagine if I won the nomination without even a button? I mean, that would be a real paradigm change. It would show that principles and dedication can win an election. And
Right.
and and I actually came a lot closer than people think. You look at the numbers, but
Did very well. Considering.
Well, the thing is, Gary did not get it on the first ballot, and you have to get 51% to win. And I think the fact is, other than Gary, I was the only one, I think, who could have gotten 51%, because none of the other fellows, I think, could attract any of Johnson's voters. But it wasn't. But basically the main reason I was running was to try to be everybody's second choice as much as possible. And then if Gary and the others did not have enough support to put together 51%, then I could be there as kind of the uniter candidate.
Right. So have you endorsed Gary Johnson? Do you support him?
Oh, I support him 100%. But I don't use the word endorse. That's part of my libertarian philosophy that's a little bit different. I don't talk about freedom and limited government. I talk about empowerment and unlimited people. Because if everybody controls themselves, then there's nobody left for government to control or for corporations to control. So my goal is for people to think for themselves and decide for themselves. So I don't want to endorse anybody. Nobody should vote for somebody because of something I said. I mean, I'll tell you who I support. It was very interesting. Gary's team had asked me to endorse. Oh, actually, not to endorse. They asked me if I would put Weld's name in nomination. Now, when I had people who nominated me, most of the people who nominated me said I was their second choice, but they still wanted to put me in nomination. That's why I was able to get Jim Fulner from the radical wing and Gary Johnson, who's like the biggest pragmatist, both to put my name in nomination.
Mm-hmm.
But this idea of being everybody's second choice, and that way we could. The whole point is to bring the party together, so we're not split into factions. So what I say is that people should think for themselves. I'm trying to come up with an explanation more from the radical perspective on how you can support Gary Johnson and Weld. And that is the way I kind of put it together philosophically is, libertarians are against force and against violence, but we are in favor of gun rights. We don't disapprove of guns, even though they are tools of force. The reason is because if you keep them under control, they empower you and they can protect your rights. And I look at the Johnson-Weld team, again, as a very powerful, forceful option. And as long as we keep them under control and nobody points them at us, that they can protect our rights. And
what really, a fascinating take on the whole thing. I like that.
Because the fact is, presidential candidates are not spokespersons for the people who vote for them. Donald Trump. No. What does the average Republican who's, trying to make ends meet have in common with Donald Trump? Not a lot.
Nothing.
Or even, especially on the other side, Hillary Clinton is a skilled attorney, a very famous politician. What does she have in common with the rank and file of the Democratic Party? And nobody criticizes Hillary for not being democratic enough, and certainly, I don't know.
Maybe some people do.
Maybe some, but certainly, a big point about Donald Trump is that.
Sorry.
So my point is that with Donald Trump, they're against him. So there really isn't a lot of push. No one is saying that we need to watch we need to watch Hillary Clinton to make sure she stays Democratic. And it would be even a bigger joke to say, well, we should make sure that Donald Trump stays Republican, because it's not about the principles. And there's a reason for it. You know, the official spokesperson for the Libertarian Party is Nick Sarwark. It's our chair, not our candidates, because everybody knows that candidates are tools, and their purpose is to try to win elections. Tools for a purpose, whether they're tools or another question. But the idea is, and the fact is, you know, Darryl Perry says that he's running to send a message. Well, look, if you want to send a message, write a book, because nobody believes politicians. So why would you try to send a message by being a politician? So I just don't think it's persuasive.
Yeah, I mean, you make some excellent points, as you do. So who was your second choice up there on the debate stage, or do you want to not say?
Oh, you know, it depends on what you mean by choice. You know, if you're talking about who I thought would be able to make the best impact, Darryl Perry would have been my second choice, because again, it would be a big surprise, and it would have been a you know, very newsworthy. And you know, it's just Gary and Weld are the best conventional candidates.
Yeah, big, definitely conventional.
But you know, we had an excellent conventional team in 2012. I think that Gary was a much better candidate than either Barack Obama or Mitt Romney, but we saw that he was not able to energize really any of those non-voters to come out. Mm-hmm. So it's a you know, so I think that if you're looking at a more conventional way, now, on the other hand, and there's always another hand, there is one situation where I think Gary and Bill Weld really were the right choice, and that is, for any of the other candidates to be successful would require a whole lot of work and engagement from rank and file libertarians. It would, you know, you know, also because we're not going to have, certainly nobody else is going to have any significant fundraising. Right. So
and they've already gotten a huge boost in fundraising. Somebody like someone with Cato connections or Reason connections just dropped $1 million on the campaign. So they're already doing well on that front. I did want to ask you, and Tom Mullen just joined us. I see his picture. I know he's here, and I know that he wanted to ask you some questions for his own journalistic work. But maybe what I'm about to ask you is something he'd be interested in as well. I wanted to say to you that I really enjoyed your debate performance and getting to know you as a candidate and as a personality, and that I hope you stick around and try again someday. Maybe for a state Senate office or something like that in the interim. But what are your future plans within the party?
Well, I did get elected back on the LNC. I was the Region 3 rep, and now I'm an at-large rep. There are a couple races coming up I'm interested in. I assume that Marcia Fudge will be running for re-election in my congressional district.
Which is where? What state?
This is Cleveland, Ohio area.
Okay.
And often she runs unopposed, which is, you know, part of the reason I think I support the Libertarian Party is just to offer people another option.
Yeah.
And she's also.
It's the same here in North Carolina. There's a lot of races, especially like state legislature level, that run unopposed, just because they've divvied up all of the little districts, and you know they don't challenge each other. It's like a gentleman's kind of agreement, and it's kind of reprehensible if you think about it.
Especially when you think that Congresswoman Fudge has run, I believe, in the past at times unopposed in the primary. So you really have it. It's this is not
no choice, no choice, no choice.
It really. So that would be one. The other option is in 2010, I ran against Richard Cordray and Mike DeWine for the Ohio Attorney General. That was a very close race. I got 3% of the vote, and I think that it was pretty close. And you know, as it turned out, I was less averse to having Mike DeWine than Cordray, although because he lost that race, he ended up in Washington, D.C. I really don't know where he does more damage. But there is some rumors that the two of them may be in the governor's race. So it would be kind of fun to have the three of us meet up again at that level.
You know, yeah, we need really great candidates at the top of the ticket to challenge people like that. But also we need really great candidates in races that are actually winnable and need contesting. So whatever you choose to do, I fully support you, and I will eagerly watch your next move. So,
well, it's interesting, you know, it's every different level is very, very different. You know, it's kind of, you know, people say that, well, why don't you start lower? It's kind of saying, oh, you want to be a brain surgeon? Why don't you start off as a barber? You know, you learn to cut. You start as a barber first, and then be a brain. Then you be a butcher.
Work your way in.
And work your way up. No, it's a totally different job. You know, I ran for, I like being in Region 3, and I ran for Region 3 rep and Region 3 alternate, and I did not win. So it's like, just because you may, because it's just a very different political situation with small races and bigger races. For instance, one thing I found that I'm just not very good at all is getting people to sign petition forms. I think I don't know what it is, but I'm very good at teaching, but getting people to sign things just not. I guess maybe because I tend to argue with people. but
you can't imagine.
Yeah, it could be. But we all have our strengths. So one of the things I've told people is that so many people have said to me, Mark, you really inspired me. Why don't you run for lower office? I said, don't tell me that. Tell me, Mark, you really inspired me. I'm going to run for lower office. That's what I want to do.
I like that. So I'm going to ask you one more question, and hopefully Tom will have his connection working, because I do want to give him the opportunity to ask you some things. But I'm going to ask you to toot your own horn a little bit here, and tell me what was your best line in the debate.
Oh, my favorite is one, just because it encapsulates a lot of how I feel. I don't need a concealed carry certificate. I don't need any kind of government marriage license, and I don't need a marijuana grower's permit. What I have is a constitution, and what I need is a government that respects it and doesn't ask for permit certificates and licenses for things that are none of the government's business.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. You had a lot of good zingers, though.
Well, the one that got on CNN and Meet the Press is when they alluded to the transsexual bathroom issues, and whether government should tell people where to go to the bathroom. And my response was, as a physician, I think 2 bathrooms are very important, but I think we should have one for people who wash their hands and one for people who don't.
I know, I love that line. That was great, and I'm from North Carolina, so I appreciate that.
But I use humor a lot, but it's to have a point. And then the point there is that we need to, we should focus on the important issues. I've told people at times that I have issues with issues, because many of these issues really aren't that important to how we live. They're important in terms of dividing the citizenry.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I just noticed that Tom Mullen is on with us, which I'm very excited. Thank you, Tom, for joining us and for sticking with it and getting your camera to work. Yay!
It's always a problem with me. I'm sorry.
Well, I know that you wanted to interview Dr. Feldman, but did not get a chance at the convention. So here's your chance to ask him anything. I will turn it over to you.
Well, the overriding thing, of course, is, and I don't know if you covered this before I got on the air, but he's just not that libertarian.
Is he not?
No, that's a joke. Don't start again.
No true libertarian.
I don't think we have the time.
Never mind.
if you heard his final statement in the debate, I've never seen John McAfee, unable to follow somebody, but I felt bad for him.
It was great.
So, did you guys talk about Dr. Feldman's healthcare ideas or no?
No, we did not. Have at it.
So, I guess what I'll throw to you, Dr. Feldman, is I read through it. I was trying to prepare so I could come over and set a time with you, and the whole thing with HuffPo turned out to be longer than I thought, and a lot of my interviews didn't come out till after the nomination anyway. But it seemed like, and I could be wrong, and maybe you could get a chance to talk about it a little, it depended on a lot of government money, but it was, a loan going one way and then the other, and quite frankly, I got lost. I'm not a banker. I know you aren't either, but you could play one on TV or just be very smart. So could you maybe in 2 minutes tell us what it was?
You're speaking about the my healthcare plan?
Yeah.
Well, basically, it falls under a larger government reform plan, which is very deceptively simple. It rests on 2 steps. Number 1, balance the budget and keep it balanced. And number 2, change all charitable contributions from tax deductions to dollar-for-dollar tax rebates up to your total federal tax liability. And this puts everyone in control of every dollar they earn, at least from the federal level, and people can decide whether they want to pay their taxes to the IRS or they want to take responsibility to support social issues in the way that they choose. And this would include health care as well.
I would send all of my money to the military. Good, you're laughing. That's totally a joke.
Yes.
and I'm going on memory right now because I don't have it in front of me, but wasn't there something with some kind of loans, or am I mixing you up with another candidate? I could be.
I think you're mixing me up with, I think it's Rhett Smith, who had this something called birth loop, or it was one of the candidates who did not make it into the debate, would talk about birth loop, where the government finances everybody with an account that they pay back at some point. Didn't make a whole lot of sense, to be tell you the truth. But the issues with health care, that we really don't have a health care system. What we have is a health services marketplace where health services are bought and sold. And the fact is, what doctors and nurses do have much less to do with healthcare than clean air and nutrition and exercise and avoiding getting your blood pressure checked. These little things that really have a whole lot more effect on health than anything that's being done in hospitals. But it's the hospitals and drug companies that are 80% of the cost of the system.
Wait, say that again. Say that again. That last sentence.
Well, let me. I'll go to still photography. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Just to give an example, I was reading an article about the obese dog. About 50% of dogs are obese in this country. And they talk about basically 2 treatments: giving your dog less food and giving your dog more exercise. There was no discussion about medications or surgical procedures to help them lose weight, because it's really not an issue. It's much more of a lifestyle problem. And I don't want to say that I'm blaming people for it, because the fact is a lot of the food products that are sold in this country are addictive. They're not geared towards having a healthy diet. And I read statistics that say that I think something like 30% of all meals are eaten in the car. Just doesn't make sense.
30%?
30% of American meals are eaten in a car.
That's sad.
And there just isn't this link between food and at times I not only does the government not recognize it, I think that it gives more power to the government. I think when people are not in good physical condition, they tend to depend more on government, less likely to energetically oppose government. And I find it fascinating that when you look at compare a Libertarian convention to Democrat or Republican, you'll see people tend to be in much better shape. I mean, if you look at present company acceptance, anyway.
Yeah, and also exclude the the striptease that we were all treated to.
We'll discuss that separately. But the
one point, unseen.
But one point I'd like to mention is when I decided to run for president, I lost 30 pounds. Steve Kerbel lost about 60 pounds. Penn Jillette has lost, I think, about 80 pounds. And Darrell W. Perry has lost over 100 pounds. And none of it was done with medications or surgery. It was all by taking control of that part of your life that involves a fork.
You can't outrun your fork. You've got to. Yeah, I went through my own diet and exercise thing last year. So
Dr. Feldman, I have a question. Do you think that lifestyle, like eating in the car and maybe the long hours and other aspects of the American lifestyle compared to maybe others, has an impact on the price of health care and how it rises faster than inflation? And compared to, and let me say, most libertarians would say, okay, the main pressures on the price of health care are the fact that there's so much artificial demand created by the massive subsidies and so much limit on supply, because of overregulation and licensing. But compared to those two factors, how much do you think lifestyle affects rising prices?
Well, the lifestyle issue does raise the demand somewhat, and there is another factor in terms of the rise, which is a technical economic factor, is that it happens because health care is very labor intensive. It depends on people much more than other supplies and equipment. And when we're hiring people, you're competing with the non-medical market, so you have to have salaries that are competitive. Now the problem is that in other industries, when they increase productivity, they increase the number of some product that they could sell with the same hours of labor. In medicine, when we have increases in productivity, we can treat diseases that we couldn't treat before, but we're not increasing the units of services per person. So since we're competing for labor with the other industries, because they're increasing productivity, can give people raises and salary increases without increasing prices, because they just produce more product with the same number of people. But in medical care, we have to pay the same salaries to attract people into the medical industries, but we can't produce more because we don't have those kinds of productivity increases because they're not incentivized. So that's why medical inflation rate tends to be higher than the non-medical inflation rate.
Yeah, the business model is a little bit flipped. In other words, if you create more wellness, you lose a customer, right? But if you create more sickness, then yeah, it's a flipped business model.
And the fact is that it's really not the job of physicians. It's like, lawyers don't tell you how not to sue people. Or how to avoid getting arrested in general, because that's not what they do for a living. And I always try, to tell people, and that's why I don't think the physicians should be the leaders. I think that it's actually the public that needs to do it. And that's just one small part of the bigger picture, which is, again, controlling yourself, empowering yourself, taking responsibility for your own life.
An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Whatever happened to that mentality?
And also helping each other be healthy, helping each other be fit, helping each other, be successful with education and business and every other part.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, though, that one of the reasons, and I think there's something to your argument that it's there's always going to be a difference in medical services where you're not turning out thousands of units with a doctor, but do you think that to some extent, regulation plays a part in where medicine advances, but we still have an MD, the top of the totem pole as far as technical expertise, treating very mundane illnesses, and no one else allowed to. I know we've have physician's assistants and practicing nurses, but to a certain extent, a physician still has to tell me that back when my daughter was younger, she would have the same ear infection over and over, and I certainly could have gone and bought some antibiotics. Now somebody would say, well, what if she had the sixth time she had it, something more serious was developing, and then a physician ever saw her? Well, that's the other side of the argument. But are we restricting too much medical care that's rather mundane? That's my question.
I would say no. For instance, the thing is that what you have is a infrastructure, and that infrastructure is expensive to maintain, and unless you can cut it, because the fact is, if you have a hospital, everybody wants to keep that hospital full because it cuts down on the fixed cost per service and allows the hospital to be more profitable. So, for instance, you have to, if a hospital has an emergency room, it has to be staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and there are doctors and nurses there, and they can take care of colds and stuff, but those patients will have to wait and get way backed up. But the fact is, if you take those patients out of the emergency department, you don't save any money unless you cut down on the number of nurses, the number of doctors, the equipment you're buying, and you don't, because the emergency departments have to be there for emergencies anyway, so you're still going to have the emergency department, and you still have to have it staffed for when big emergencies come in. So this idea,
wow.
so the idea that somebody coming to the emergency department who gets a $1,000 bill for treating a cold and never pays it, that's not really part of the problem. That's really funny money, because whether they have it there or not, it really is not affecting the healthcare cost.
So
let me ask you this then. Let me go radical libertarian on you, since that's where we all just came from. And we did just talk about Darryl Perry, so I got to get his point of view in here somehow. And that is that I'm asserting I have a right, if I feel like I've got bronchitis, whether I'm right or wrong, to decide to take antibiotics and buy them from Rachel here, who's not a pharmacist, without permission from a doctor. And isn't that that's a free market. Now I'm taking a risk. I could have cancer, and it could go undetected. That should be up to me, though. That's my argument. And that's really the argument a libertarian should be making about the healthcare market. That's a very, very strong extreme statement. I also happen to agree with it, but it's we're nowhere near what I just said, and shouldn't we be trying to go farther in that direction?
Well, I think that it's really two separate issues, because the big problem in healthcare is that people don't pay for it directly, and in fact, we're starting to see healthcare costs plateau as the deductibles and co-pays are probably what the cost would have been anyway if it wasn't for insurance. So basically, we're getting to the point where the insurance premiums are mainly paying for the insurance companies, and it's our out-of-pocket that's really paying for the medical care. But it's not a unique problem in medicine. It's in every situation. I remember when the New York Times asked, why is it that a gallbladder, or why does a coronary artery bypass procedure cost $50,000 in the U.S. and only $10,000 equivalent in Belgium? I said, well, that's a good question, and my question is, why does the New York Times cost $5 and the Belgian Times only costs $1? That newspapers are also much more expensive in the United States. It's supply and demand, and what our resources are, and what people want to spend their money on. So, but even I don't promote saying you could grow you could grow your own antibiotics in your backyard or basement. But the fact is, Canada has very good drugs, and there's no evidence that they're having more problems with their medications in Canada. And sure, regulation does cause a lot more harm than good. But the fact is, what you really want is the people to need a whole lot less medical care, a whole lot less. And we want people to be more fit. We want to have fewer carcinogens in our environment. People can spend less time out in the sun. There's a lot of things that could be done, and to just encourage people to have a lifestyle that's not hazardous to them.
Well, I could give you, here's another example. It's kind of a variation of what I just said, and this is personal experience. I used to be, believe it or not, in the hearing aid business. What? And among other things, yeah, I never heard that before. And one of the things we did was we were importing German manufacturer's hearing aid, and another side of the business was we were trying to launch a what we called an assisted hearing device. It was basically a Walkman. It was an in-ear device that maxed out at 35 decibels, and we were going to let people test their own hearing in a drugstore. We had devised a hearing test like the one you take at the audiologist, only they're going to self-administer, and they were going to decide whether this thing could help them or not. And it had all kinds of warnings all over the place, and don't use this without the guidance of a physician or an audiologist. And it turned out that we needed to get a law changed in Florida to be able to do this, and we tried to actually lobby the legislature, and the long story short, it failed. We were not able to market the product, but I mean, when you think about what we were trying to do, everybody complains, oh, my parent, my grandparent needs a hearing aid that costs $4,000, right? And basically for the same thing as Rachel's wearing right now. It's an amplifier in the ear. There's some technology. There's 2 microphones in it. You can do a little bit more than maybe an iPod or an iPhone can, but there's really not that much difference. And to boot, the iPhone is going to put more than 100 decibels into your ear, where this thing was going to max out at 35, and just give people a bridge who are just starting to experience hearing loss. So there was no danger with this, and then what it came down to get it squashed was the idea that somebody might not get their ears checked, and some might have cancer or some other problem, and so we just could not allow them to use this device for about 1/10 the cost of a hearing aid. And I just can't help feeling that, knowing how that's affecting that market, there's not a lot of that in medicine. Where if people had more freedom, they would not make as bad of decisions as everyone assumes they would.
I agree with you. Know, I'm a big fan of freedom, but it's just an issue of you know, if we were free, I don't know that gold would cost any less, because it costs a certain amount to get it out of the ground, and you know, I don't know. I mean, but when I look at medicine, you know, you have a lot of the cost. So much of the cost is the system, you know, the hospitals and the CAT scanners and the MRI machines. And the fact is, even if people were a whole lot healthier and needed less, your choices are to either get rid of these machines, or if you know, if you have the machines available, the cost is already there. So we have to change to really make any significant change in cost. You know, we have to change the way our whole infrastructure is set up. It's kind of like saying.
You don't think it's insurance companies that are adding to the overhead?
No. Well, here's the thing. What we have, it's like someone says, "I want to buy a Lamborghini, but I know it's really expensive. You know, having the maintenance and everything, and it's so bad. So I'll only drive it 3 days a week." Well, it's going to cost you almost exactly the same, because you'll be spending the same amount for security, for maintenance, for all these things. So and actually your cost per mile goes down the more you use it. So the problem is that you don't want to say with our medical care system, we have this Lamborghini of a medical care system, let's use it less. Instead, what we have to do is, you know, trade it in for a nice Toyota. I mean, that'll get us there just as fast and safely, but at much lower cost.
Interesting.
I've had an idea, though, that you know, just like casinos, whether we could have a top-notch medical center on some Indian reservation where the federal law does not apply, and really do things on the basis of what's the best for patients, and not what takes care of our regulators.
Tom, any final questions in our last 2 minutes or so?
Well, I could hear, I think Dr. Feldman makes some great points, but I feel like I'm out here still wondering, and maybe this is the last question, since we did this to Gary Johnson at the debate, if the bill comes across your desk to allow people to grow their own antibiotics and self-prescribe or buy them without a doctor's prescription, do you sign it, or are you just not that libertarian?
Well, that's an easy one. I mean, the answer is, you know, get rid of as many laws as possible. You know, my favorite was when they talked about you can't get rid of marriage. There's 18,000 laws already about marriage. You'd have to get rid of 18,000 laws. I'm like, sounds like a good start to me. Yeah, because the fact is that the laws don't do anything anyway. The underlying problem with laws is that for some reason criminals don't seem to follow them, and they're like the most important people who should be following the law. You know, reasonable people are going to do things that are reasonable, and unreasonable people do things that are unreasonable. You know, there is. I had a patient years and years ago when I was in Baltimore. He was supposed to be on blood thinners, and there's one called warfarin. Well, he found out that warfarin was the main ingredient in rat poison. So he decided he didn't have to take warfarin. He could just take little tiny bits of rat poison every day, and it worked just fine. He used to Yes, it's the same stuff. It's the same chemical structure. But you know, of course, you have to be very careful with it. And what he used to do is make a little nick in his skin and see how long it would bleed. If it was bleeding too long, he would hold for a while. If it clotted real quick, then he would take a little bit more. So, but now I'm not recommending this.
He took rat poison and it worked?
Oh yeah, because it's the same stuff. You know, these things are not magic. You know, medicine isn't magic. You know, yeah. I mean, it's a. But the fact is, it would not make a big difference. I think that competition is very good. I think people should be able to get drugs that from any developed country, and it should all be over the counter. I don't think that I don't think, I look at it this way. I really don't like when people talk about free market solutions unless they really can tell how we're going to get to the free market. But when I think about free markets, I think about babysitters. You're going to the movies, you get somebody to watch your kids. For the most part nowadays, they're not regulated, they're not licensed, they're not controlled.
Thank God.
But they still
I never get one.
But I don't know how much. I don't know how much do you pay for babysitters?
Oh, 10 to 15 an hour.
So basically, what people are trying to get for minimum wage is I hear Myra, it's $15 to $20 an hour, and this is with kids without a minimum wage. It's all supply and demand. So I would say that freedom is great.
I could get it. I will say I could get a babysitter for minimum wage, $8 or $9 an hour. I could get that's one thing that I do not negotiate on. If somebody wants $10 to keep my kids safe, I give them $10, probably 11 or 12.
And that's my point is I always say the minimum wage is always zero. Ask anyone who's unemployed.
Now, I do have to say that the wonderful Jeffrey Tucker has just joined us.
I'm confused. I thought it was at 10 o'clock Eastern time. I'm so sorry, Rachel.
Oh, that is fine. And
I thought it was 9:30.
I changed the time and I didn't put it in flashing neon type enough. So yeah, I will take responsibility for that and just be happy
anyway,
to
I'm just glad to see you. I don't have to say anything. It was good to see you at the the wild and interesting Libertarian Party Convention. And
was it the craziest and most wonderful you've ever been to?
I've written some articles about the topic the last couple of days, and true to the nature of the libertarian movement, right? I mean, I've received more vituperative response to what I've written than on these 2 or 3 articles than anything I've written in years. I mean, I'm dealing with this just constantly, and I kind of which I don't mind disagreement, but I wish people would chill a little bit. I mean,
they will.
They will. I mean, as a lifetime dedicated anarchist, I have uncompromising intellectual commitments, but I'm just wildly excited about what this ticket is doing for just the topic of human liberty. And given our times, in which at the top of the ticket in the Republican Party, which liberalism classically understood has been cast out, really essentially in both parties. For a third party to emerge with a unified theme, which is that we should be freer. All right, so that's basically. You can argue about particulars of this, that thing about the candidates, but that's the upshot as I understand the candidacy right now. And also, I'm kind of admire the fact that nobody treats these people like great saviors or heroes. They're just dudes carrying a simple message. I'm actually thrilled, and I'm glad to be alive in what I think might be a transformative time in American politics. So,
it really might be. I mean, we always say that about every election, but really,
we always say that. But I think this time it's really different. I mean, the times are changing so fast, and I'm trying to chronicle it and describe it and interpret it according to my own understanding of it. And that's all I'm trying to do. I mean, like a guy tonight is like, we all have our problems with Facebook trolls and everything, but this guy is like denouncing me as a paid shill for the Koch Institute, the Koch brothers, which is always very funny. I mean, like, do you really imagine that that the Koch brothers send you a check? I wish that were true, right?
I would like to sign up for that check.
I know. I would definitely cash. And let me just tell you something really quickly. So about a year ago, I got because I had spoken for Charles Koch Institute, which, by the way, I was very honored to be invited, right? They not for the institute, but for the young students that were there, And I gave my usual anarchist message because I can't think any other way. And I think they covered my travel or something like that, which I was grateful for. But for whatever reason, one day I went to the mailbox and there was a check in the mail, and it was from the Charles Koch Institute, and it was for like It was for like $3.16. I don't know why they sent it. I don't know why I got that. I mean,
I knew you were one of
You
them.
are a page, Joe. Oh my goodness, I knew it.
And you know what I wanted to do?
Exposed.
I kind of regret I didn't do it, right? But I wanted to take a picture of it and like post it on Facebook and go, I'm a paid shill of the code. And I didn't do it because I thought it would just be like weirdly disrespectful. But now I kind of, in retrospect, I kind of regret not having at least taken a picture of it.
So you were a speaker.
Yeah.
Mark Feldman was a candidate.
Hey, and Mark Feldman was so awesome at the convention. You were just
He was.
you're so bright and so brilliant and so charming, and I don't know what we would do without you. I mean, you brought such I don't know, sobriety in a way. I mean, and you're silly, but you're sound and you're sensible, and God knows libertarians need that shit. Thank you.
And then Tom Mullen was a journalist, and I was a superdelegate. So what I was saying when we started this show is that we were all there at the convention in very different roles. So I love that we're all here on the show on Politics After Dark to give our perspective.
Yeah. It was a wonderful. It was. I had keynoted 2 years ago at the Libertarian Convention, which I think was in Ohio, and it felt much more like, a kind of Rotary Club meeting or something like that 2 years ago, and which was fine. It was fine.
But it's very different now.
But now suddenly, and I think what we're going through is growing pains in the sense that, like, you do have growing pains. Anybody who's growing up experiences pain, And I that's what I saw happening this weekend, was a sense of, like, oh my God, who are we? What should we do? Why is all the press here? What happens to us? Are we going to lose our souls? Which is a good question to ask. What is our future? Are we really going to be competing on the main stage now? I mean, what are our responsibilities and how do we live up to them? These are all questions that every libertarian today is asking himself or herself.
Yeah, and those are good questions to ask, and we'll find the answers together. But I just want to say this about the Libertarian Convention. I was told, as a delegate, super duper delegate, that Gary Johnson's campaign was like flying people out and getting them like hotel rooms and steak dinners, and I show up and I go to Gary Johnson's reception, like, on Friday night, and I'm like, oh, ho, ho, this is going to be great. And I walk in, and there's no food, there's no candidate, and it's I shudder to say it, cash bar.
Oh, my gosh.
See, I mean, all these rumors of money flooding the world, for people who...
I had to buy my own drink. I'm from D.C. We don't do that.
I know, and here you were trying to sell out,
I was trying my best to sell out, but I bought a glass of Chardonnay. And I was like, yes, yes, $6. Rachel, we are not in D.C. anymore. We are now paying $7.50 a glass for Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Not a Republican anymore. We're libertarian.
Although
there's no such thing as a free glass of wine. So that was my experience with attempting to sell out to Gary Johnson. Didn't work.
One different perspective I had was it was about 6 or 8 weeks prior to the convention, and someone in one of the Facebook groups said, they'd like to be a delegate, but their state is full. And one of the other LNC members said, oh, well, just show up because there's always empty seats. And I said, I would call around and get a delegate seat because this year is going to be different. This year, the delegations are going to be full, and they were. I mean, it was. We had a lot of alternates who would have loved to be delegates who could not be, and then people who thought that just by showing up they could be alternates. But that was not the way it went. There's a totally different story
That was
this
a
year.
safe assumption in the past, though, from my understanding. You could just show up and get on a delegation. But the North Carolina delegation was full, and we had alternates. So that's an excellent problem to have.
Now, I wanted to discuss, if we have a couple minutes,
Sure.
because I felt very differently about the a bit of performance art that we had.
Not the naked guy.
Yeah, well, he wasn't. He was. My comment was, he said that we should be happy he didn't use his full time. I said, yeah. You didn't. I said it wasn't the full time and it wasn't the full Monty, and I was appreciative of both. But
well, what I've been pointing out is that we did not elect him. Yes, he was a candidate on stage. He was not the chair.
That's true. And the other point was that I made is, I made this point 2 days earlier when there was a question regarding the omissions plank. And there was a committee that looked at it. Instead of having a unified answer, they had a majority report and a minority report. The minority report was coming from the radical anarchist faction. And then it came before the delegates, and it was not on the agenda to discuss the minority report. So there was a motion to suspend the rules to discuss the minority report. I did not have a strong feeling about the proposal, but I felt that that would be a great time to show support for the radicals, that they have a voice, and we want to give them at least some period of time to show that we want to hear their voice. And I wonder whether when you don't give people a voice, then they feel they need to scream to get attention.
That's
and I see that the dance as a scream to get attention, and it worked. It was, and I raised the point. Well, Martin Luther King refused to condemn riots, even though he was very firmly nonviolent. But he said that riots are the language of the unheard. That the answer is not to tell people not to riot. The answer is to listen to them so that you don't need to riot. And,
wow. Same could be said for terrorism, I think.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, and I think that well,
to some extent.
And one of my comments, I think that part of the problem, I see the Libertarian Party as very different. That we are not like Democrats and Republicans, except we're a special combination of fiscal responsibility and social tolerance. That's not. We have a government that is controlling people. That is holding people down, that is killing people, putting people in cages, that for no reason. The reason the non-aggression principle is important is not just because it's ethical and right, but that's what keeps us from being terrorists. I described the Libertarian Party as the first terrorist organization dedicated to nonviolence. That we are against the system. We want to take power away from the powerful. We are subversive. We're not Republican light. We're not light anything. And I think what we're going to see, I think we're doing one last try at this kind of establishment way to be heard. I think that 2020 is going to be a very different situation.
Interesting. That's interesting. In what sense, Mark?
Because I think that we're going to see that we're not going to be able to win on name recognition or fundraising or government experience, because the other parties have a monopoly on those things. Where we can win is on principles and integrity that the other parties just don't have.
But look, I think this is look. First of all, let me just say I don't think any of us have the answers. Okay, so. Let's just grant that. I don't think any of us know the perfect, infallible way forward to achieve liberty. So, to me, like my old friend Murray Rothbard used to say, questions of strategy are entirely open, right? But I was looking at libertarian vote totals in the past, and Actually, Johnson did better this last election than any candidate, I think, in LP history. Am I right about that?
Well, Harry Brown did a little bit better in percentage, but because the population and the voting group has gotten bigger.
Okay.
But also, though, it depends on what you're looking at. If you look at the number of people who didn't vote for him, probably more people did not vote for Gary Johnson than any time in history, because again, the voting population is larger. So it's so if you're looking in terms of ability to have a tipping point. Now, what I always say is, of course, it's like Penn Jillette said, my whole take on libertarianism is that I simply don't know what's right for other people, and I'm very happy. I think that as a scientist, I want to do an experiment. I want to give Johnson and Weld the maximum support that we can, 100% support, and then we'll see what we see. I hope I'm wrong,
Yeah.
But let's.
What I'm hoping is that they'll run and bring the topic of liberty to a mass audience, and then that mass audience will be fired up emotionally and intellectually to seek out more radical solutions. And that we. So I hope you're right, Mark, and that 2012 they will have prepared the ground for an intensification of a broadening of support and an intensification of commitment.
I also think we'll have a special opportunity in 2020 as well, because I think the trend is going to continue of divisive candidates. So I expect it'll be Kanye West for the Democrats and David Duke for the Republicans.
Oh my goodness.
One question I have for all of you, I think I always hear we're what's wrong with this candidate, what's wrong with that, and I kind of want to say what's wrong with the electorate, and I think you have to consider the electorate. I actually wrote a piece in defense of the nomination of Johnson and Weld based on what the electorate is ready to hear, and I kind of compared them somewhat facetiously, but not all that much, to when Pat Boone was singing Little Richard songs in the 50s. It's if you watch them now, you cringe, but at the time they kind of were the gateway drug for the right audience.
I get that.
Little Richard.
I've always, I understand what you're saying. I remember, I don't know, I have to monitor my own temperature on these things, but I didn't have a high opinion of Johnson until about 2 years ago when I heard him speak at Liberty Fest in New York. And I remember just sitting there, and I was a little tired from travel, and I had a drink or something. I sat in the back of the room, and he gave his speech, which was, I guess you could say, kind of moderate, But as I sat there listening, I thought, I don't disagree really with anything he says, actually.
His non-libertarianism is greatly exaggerated, in my opinion, but he is wrong on some things. He does fall into the I don't like this, so I want the government to ban it.
That can be a little bit disturbing. Although I think his thing on religious discrimination could be defended. I disagree with it, but I could offer a good defense of it. My biggest problem with him is the tax thing. I think he favors something like a national sales. Am I right about that? Does he favor a national sales
tax?
Fair tax, yeah.
Yeah. So that I don't like that.
I think you might like my alternative. I suggest the honest tax, because I don't think the fair tax is fair. With the honest tax, once a year a government van pulls up to your house, guys with guns come out into your house and take anything they want. And if you cooperate, you're done in 10 minutes.
That's good, yeah. So, but and as for Weld,
that's horrible.
I'm willing to defend.
But it is honest.
I'm willing to defend Weld too on a number of grounds, that he played an important role in history, and he has a libertarian temperament, if not in specifics, at least in spirit. And I'm somewhat affected by the fact that he arranged a special meeting with me. It's true, and told me he's been a big reader of my work and admires me for years. Maybe he's just a brilliant politician. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't want to pigeonhole people, and I always believe that people have a chance to grow, and I think both these guys deserve credit for making liberty the topic of their campaign, basically.
Yes.
In times of grave authoritarianism, where we're threatened from the left and the right, and where both parties have become so corrupt, and obviously so, and I would say irredeemably so, at least at the top.
I really liked how Tom put it, that Gary Johnson and Bill Weld these are the cards we've been dealt, and any poker player should be able to win the pot with that.
That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah. And that's more or less my attitude. And I'm saying this as a person who would just gladly push the button and blow up everything. I mean, I'm just I'm fed up with it, and I have no faith in the Constitution. I don't believe in government at all. But at the same time, under the influence of Murray, I always think that more liberty is better than more tyranny.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, we have gone way over.
I'm so sorry to come late, Rachel. I'm so sorry to you. And you're so sweet for me.
Better late than never.
It's an honor to be with Mark and Tom, and so I've been wanting to talk about this. So I'm so sorry that I've not been with you all this time.
Well, you'll have to come on next show to make up for it.
I'd like to. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jeffrey Tucker. Thank you, Mark Allen Feldman, and thank you, Tom Mullen, for joining me on Politics After Dark.
Bye-bye,
Great
y'all.
talking with you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Pleasure to see you all. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye.